All right, guys. Power Morphicon, right? 2022.
Woo!
Right. It's been a little bit. So once again, I'm very honored to be moderating this lovely panel. Power Ranger podcasts is what we're here for today. On the stage that we have with us right now are some of the longest running podcasts in the Power Rangers community. And I'm just going to let them introduce themselves. We'll start here with Tyler. We'll go down the list from there.
Yeah, I'm Tyler Waldman. I'm the host of RangerCast. We went from 2005, I think we were like the first out of gate, to like 2013, petered out. Just came back, and I'm thrilled to be up here.
Cool. Hey, I'm Michael. Is that working? Yeah? Cool. I'm from Ranger Danger. We started in 2013 and have been going ever since, every Wednesday for 9.5 years.
Right.
It's so long.
Oh my gosh, your accent is real. It's
Yes.
real.
It's not. I don't just put it on for the podcast. It actually comes out of my mouth. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lisa J. From No Pink Spandex, and we started in. Oh, thank you. And of course, my co-host here, Brandon, and we started back in 2005. So I was on RangerCast with Tyler, back in the day, and then, just started my own thing, and we've been on and off since 2005. Listen, okay, I can joke about myself, all right? Okay.
Like Lisa said, my name is Brandon. I am also a part of No Pink Spandex as well, but I also have my own podcast, Tribunal of the Grid, which which we've been running since 2018. So we're fairly new, but yeah, we air every Wednesday, and yeah, we talk about Power Rangers as well and the actors who play them. Thank you.
And that leaves me. Hi, I'm Zach. I am one of the co-hosts of the Ranger Command Power Hour podcast. We've been going since 2014, if I'm correct in my math, which is dodgy at best. And we did take a little summer hiatus recently, but we are back with brand new episodes. In fact, releasing at some point this weekend is our interview with Melissa Flores.
Melissa's here at the show, so be sure to go see Melissa. She's got a bunch of stuff going on. All right, so Power Ranger podcast. So the podcast scene for Power Rangers, there's it's the one thing I love about podcasts, and I think everyone here will agree, right, is even if there's 15 Power Ranger podcasts, it doesn't feel crowded, right? Am I right? Because everybody seems to have a different type of show that works for a different type of audience, right? So my biggest question that I'm going to start with for everybody, just to go down the list again, and maybe we'll start with Zach. We'll go backwards this time. What made you want to podcast in the first place? Oh, Lord. What was the thing that said, you know what, I want to do a podcast? What started it? What was the drive, the passion that got it all started?
Mine is probably the most atypical answer you'll get, and that is I was on Facebook one night and I saw Eric post, I think I want to start a podcast. Would anybody be interested? And I went, I'm not doing anything. What do you want? Let's do it. So from that, sort of seemingly benign Facebook post, we've done this podcast since 2014, and I wanted a chance to get to talk about one of my hobbies, one of my fandoms with my friend, and getting to do that for the last math years is great, and I am so thankful that I get to do this and talk about Power Rangers on a bi-weekly basis, and the opportunities it's afforded, I think not only myself but all of us here at the table, getting to interview some of the actors, getting to do experiences like Power Morphicon. That is a wonderful extra, but I don't think that's why we do it. We do it because we just want to have fun and talk about a fun thing. That's why I do it anyway.
Well, mine is a pretty long story, only because I drew it out. But basically, it all started. I was in undergrad, and I was listening. I was a huge fan of No Pink Spandex. I mean, still am. But I was a huge fan of No Pink Spandex, and during that time they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna have auditions."
Oh my gosh!
And And I was like, I'm gonna audition. And then I was like, no, I'm not gonna audition. Nobody's gonna want to listen to me. And so I chickened out and I didn't do it. But then I went to Morphicon in 2018, and then I met my co-host Lena. And well, I already met her, but we went together. And we were just in the hotel room, and I was just like, you know what? I would love to start a podcast. And she was like, yes, but about what? And I was like, you know what? Well, nobody really talks about the actors like that. So let's talk about the actors. And she was like, yes, but we need a third person. And I was like, I know someone. And I text my friend Will, and he was like, absolutely. And that's how we got started.
Well, my story is a little different from some of the people here, but I if anybody knew me back in like elementary school, whatever, like I was very shy. I didn't, I didn't know how to. I stuttered. Well, maybe y'all will know, but I stuttered. It was a whole thing, and in order to learn how to not like to come out of my shell, because like I'm not a shy person, but I just didn't know how to break out of that, was to learn how to interview people. And so, I think it was I got into college, and my first interview ever was with Johnny Unbosh. And so I studied, I was just like, come on my radio show and everything. And then because I had a radio show at the college, and we did one interview for the radio show, and then the place shut down. And so didn't have a radio show anymore. But I was just like, okay, well, this has to live somewhere. And so like a lot of stuff, short story, I thought, well, I want to start my own podcast where I'm able to like interview some of these folks who I either know or who I've worked with before, or that sort of thing. So that's how No Pink Spandex started. Yep.
I was in a moving van with my friend Matt. I was driving it, and we were moving his stuff, but he couldn't drive, so I was driving the van. And he turned to me and said, "Do you want to do a Power Rangers podcast?" And I said, "No, that sounds like a lot of work. How do you even do a podcast anyway?" He was like, "I don't know, find out." And for some reason I did, which in retrospect was a bad move. And then we started doing a Power Rangers podcast, and we said, there's lots of other people doing like news and interviews and stuff. What if we just watch the show and then we talk about it? And neither of us did the maths that would take 20 years when we started, which is good because we would not have started if we'd known it would have taken 20 years. But at some point, like 3 years in, Matt and I were talking about, is it time to end it? Is it time to end it? And he looked at me and said with a passion, like, we will not stop until we have done every episode. And now, 7 years later, that we are both incredibly busy, I am holding him to that with a vice grip. So we've got 10 years to go, but we will not stop until we have done every episode.
So I'm going to try to keep this short. Back in 2005, around the time that Apple added a podcast directory, I searched and found that there were no Power Rangers podcasts. So with no intention of doing it myself, I posted on Ranger Board, idly, anybody want to start a Power Rangers podcast? Next thing you know, I had no idea what I was doing. I was using like a cheap plug-in mic like this, but cheaper, a lot cheaper, and no headphones, and recording on my mom's computer, and I arguably still don't know what I'm doing. But I found people like Lisa, like Jer, Chris Finero, Rylan Duncan, Seamus Kelly, and just kind of patched a podcast together, and it just became a habit.
Awesome. So I have a question now for two of the podcasts up here. Lisa, Brandon, how did you get the name No Pink Spandex? Where did that originate from? Because usually people put something audio related in the name, or like cast or whatever. Where did No Pink Spandex come from?
So funny story or not, because because this is so long ago. It was on Ranger Board, and on Ranger Board, I forgot what kind of game it was, but it was kind of like a Survivor-esque game where, like, there were two captains, and then I don't know if it was like the members of each of some of the Ranger Boarders were on two teams. I don't exactly remember, but I just remember I was one of the captains, and so we had to come up with a name. And the first name that popped in my mind was No Pink Spandex, because ain't nobody got time for Kimberly. I was like, ain't nobody got time. I'm not doing this. I'm from the Bronx. I'm a black girl from the Bronx. Valley girl from California. I don't vibe, right? So that's where that came from. It's literally the first thing that came up to my mind. And then I don't remember who even won the game, but I was just like, I'm gonna keep that name though, and it's funny because earlier on when I would try to interview people, like one of them being Tony Oliver, because I reached out to him, and then he told me at first, he first thought that No Pink Spandex was like an anti-Power Ranger site. And I'm like, okay, this might be a problem. Did I change it? No. I like the irony. So that's where that came from.
Awesome. Michael,
Yes.
why is it Ranger Danger?
Because Matt was in a car with his dad, and like a park ranger or a traffic ranger was going past, and Matt's dad said, Ranger Danger, and Matt went, we don't have a name for the podcast yet. There it is.
That's one of those golden moments of an epiphany happening, and you're just like,
Right.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I love these stories. This is great. Okay. So every podcast up here has been around for quite a while, right? At least 8, 9 years, almost 10 years for most of them, over 10 for a lot of you. Favorite interview you've done? We're gonna start. Since I started Zach last time, I'm gonna
Thank
start
you.
Tyler this time.
Oh, I start?
Oh, you start, yeah.
I have a couple. You can't find them online because one time I plugged the wrong hard drive into my Xbox 360. But there are the times where we just kind of got on the phone and let it roll. Greg was a great interview. Greg Aronowitz. Got him on Halloween. At one point, Chris Violette grabbed the phone and said, "Hey, Ranger Board," and that was just so insightful and funny about the show. Kerrigan Mahan was also great. But the one that sticks out for me, I think, was the first one with the late Robert Axelrod. Here I was, just some high schooler. I literally was a high school senior when I started the show. And I emailed him, and he was happy to give me 40 minutes of his time and talk about where the voice of Lord Zed came from, and his frustrations with how the character was nerfed, and just his history in voice acting. He's such a kind man, and I think we all miss him terribly.
Yeah, rest in peace.
I wasn't texting. I was on our podcast website trying to find what interviews that we've done so that I didn't upset anyone. And I'm an idiot because I know immediately what one it is. They announced that Kyle Higgins was going to be writing Power Rangers for Boom Studios. And one of our listeners tweeted at him and said, would you go on Ranger Danger? And he replied, yes. And that interview changed my life.
I say that snowballed a little bit, right?
Like very literally and obviously. We did that interview. I emailed him when issue 1 came out to say, hey, this was great. And he said, do you want to do an interview every month, like a director's commentary? And I said, yeah, sure. We could probably find time to do that. And I edit 6 comic books that he's working on now.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Michael's also an editor for Image Comics,
which I wasn't
doing
2
Kyle
years
Higgins and Brian Parrott
and
Melissa Flores' the Massive Verse books.
Yeah, you can very distinctly point to that interview as an inflection point in my life, and it's got to be that one.
Well, clap up for that, Jack. Clap
Yeah,
up.
bro.
Getting coins, okay, real coins after interviews. I would. Oh dear, this is picking your favorite children.
I'm really interested in your answer because you
Yeah.
guys have interviewed
You've picked
everybody.
Yeah, even a lot that have not come out yet. Oh my gosh. So I would say what is public. I think the most notable that I've done was David Yost.
Yep.
That initial one where he came out, and I was not that was not planned. I did not know that was going to happen. He trusted me, and I filmed it, and and then literally again Tony Oliver, because it was at Anime Festival Orlando at the time, and then I passed Tony Oliver, and he was just and I don't remember this story, but he was just like, he said that I said I think that I just had my Oprah moment, and I'm like, well, I kind of did, because like it was right before I posted that interview, right before PMC. I think it was what 2010 maybe or 2012. I forget which one. 2012. Right before I literally got like publish, got on a plane, and then like TMZ people, Perez Hilton at the time, like I mean everybody was picking up on the story, and I'm just like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? So I mean, by far the most notable. And then I guess another one that I would choose most recently is when we did a special, like a Juneteenth special, if you will. And so I talked with Karen Ashley, Nakia Baris, a good friend of mine, Danielle. And, we're just 4 Black girls talking about Black girl stuff and, Black girl things, interwoven Power Ranger stuff. But like it's just very rare to see us or hear us, just have that space and talk about things. So, yeah, I would say that.
Well, let's see. I was sitting here thinking because I was like, everybody just have all these like really good stories about like how these podcasts are changed their lives, and I'm just like, I haven't had that. But I would probably say my most favorite.
I have one. If you don't mention it, go ahead. Go ahead. Your favorite. Go ahead.
Well, I have one, but then I also have another one yeah. But my personal favorite is the interview with Nakia and Kat, only because of the fact that Nakia is like my most favorite Yellow Ranger of all time. And I was just like, and that was also during the time when they were coming out with Power Rangers playback. So I was like, oh, that'd be the perfect way to like, have them come on the show and talk about what they're doing and stuff like that. So that was like one of my most favorite, and I got to ask them like a whole bunch of questions about just how things were on set, what they're doing after, what they're currently doing, things like that. And it was just so much fun to talk to them. I really enjoyed it. But the one that I think Lisa is referring to is the interview I did with Samuel Benta.
Hello.
So basically we were the first podcast that he ever decided to talk to. And it was on a whim because we were just sitting around on the chat just randomly, and Lena was like, you know what? Just going through the roster of like Rangers, and she's like, it'll be very interesting to talk to Samuel Benta. And I was like, what? She's just like, yeah. Let's reach out. Let's just see if he'll do it. And literally, like, she hit him up, and he responded immediately and was like, yes. And we were like, what? Okay. And before we recorded, he was just like, you guys are the first ones ever that I'm doing this with. I stepped away from, the Power Rangers world for a bit, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh, okay, this should be fun. All right. So we got to, talk about a lot of things, including the infamous banner situation. It was an interesting time. I will say that there were some things that happened during that interview that we did not put into the podcast. A lot of things that were said that was like, no, don't think I'm going to include that. I want to make you look good.
Cut
Right. No. But yeah, I would probably say that was probably the most notable for sure.
I mean, and he trusted y'all to
Yes.
be the,
Right.
as controversial or non-controversial, so that was a good get for you. So that's why I wasn't trying to be shady.
For me with Ranger Command, I think the one that I was most nervous about ended up being one of the most life-changing ones, and that is Dave Fielding, who, as you all know, played Zordon. I was nervous as all get out because he's Zordon. You have the mentor of mentors coming to your podcast. What do you do but freak out? And so I've got the pre-interview nerves, and I'm just like, oh man, okay, just get through this. Like, come on, we can do this. It's cool. He's just another guy. Like, he's totally gonna be just chill. And we started talking about comic book stuff because he's a huge comic book nerd, and I had no idea. And this was about the time like the live action Flash show was starting up. And so I geeked out with him on that for like a good 30 minutes in the middle of this interview. And I was like, we're going to get a live action Gorilla Grodd. It's going to be the most insane thing. Oh my God, the Flash. And so because of that interview, it's like now I play Dungeons and Dragons with David every Monday night. We play a D&D live stream game that he's in. And it's just one of those things where it's like, well, that's not how I thought life was going to go for me. But here it is. I play Dungeons and Dragons with Zordon. So.
Like, no, and then to piggyback off of that, like some of the times when you're doing these, like a lot of times you do interviews, like you do the interview, like, okay, everybody's nice, and then you never hear from them again, right? But then like you play Dungeons and Dragons with David Phil. Like,
Yeah.
I was playing Words with Friends with David Yost for like a minute. And I kept beating him, and I felt bad. I was like,
it's so rewarding to be able to be like, this is a person who I looked up to as a kid, and who now I basically have on speed dial to be like, hey, what happened again last week in our session? I totally blanked. I missed out on a ton of notes. What's going on? But yeah, like doing these interviews, it's such, like you said, like most of the time it's just like, okay, there's a person I won't really logistically ever talk to again. But then there are those interviews where it's like we see them at every convention and they remember our hey, it's good to see you again. How are you? And how was your show? And it's wonderful.
I once did a panel that Tony Oliver crashed.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that sounds fun.
they love to crash a panel, child. Okay,
So,
yes.
so following up, I'm actually going to follow up with that because I think this is a great topic. How important is trust when you are interviewing guests? Because 99.9% of the time, this stuff isn't live, right? It's not like something that's not a live stream that's going out. It's stuff that then they go back and they edit, they cut things out. They cut a lot of that, the sounds and the heavy breathing or what have you, the ums. How important is that trust where, you interview someone and they say something, oh, you know what, I don't think I can talk about that. Can we take that out? How important is it to then not jump on Twitter or jump on, Ranger board or something and be like, hey guys, can you guys talk about trust and how important it is trust when you do interviews with either, previous or current people in the Power Rangers sphere, so to speak?
It's so key. Like, you have to establish that connection. You have to say, hey, listen, if at any point you are not comfortable with something that you have said and it cannot be out there in the wild, rest assured that we will edit it out. No one will have to hear it ever. And you're not worried about like Hasbro snipers coming to, and that's it.
Right.
And one of the, like, I can think of a couple of times where we've had interviews where it's like, oh, that I probably shouldn't have said that. Can you guys cut that? Yeah, absolutely. It's cut. Consider it gone. Like, that is it. And even, things will happen where, like, one incident that sticks out in my mind is we had an interview where a question we asked went poorly with the guest. And I won't say who and I won't say what the question was or anything like that. But in the long run, we were like, yeah, we need to edit that out because that makes everyone involved look not great. So we're gonna make this product the best we can and cut that.
No, like I pretty much exactly that. And I'm just gonna go back to the Samuel Benta interview. And I feel like just going based off of what you were saying about trust, he really did trust us to, be objective and stuff like that. And one of the things that he asked us, and a couple people have asked us this when we, asked them, can we interview them? They were just like, are you like a TMZ kind of a thing? Like what do you like? What kind of podcast is this? And we have to explain to them like, no, when we say we talk about the actors, like we're not actually like going like into your personal lives, being like,
you the shade
"Ooh,
room,
right, right, like, ooh, guess who we saw him with last night? Like, no, we're not that. We're
Someone
most certainly
should
not
do
that.
that.
What's your favorite
podcast.
substance to
Right.
abuse?
Now that would be interesting.
Listen, some of the news that happened this week, child.
Nobody out here be that guy or girl. All right,
Yeah.
don't be doing that.
Okay.
right. No, we're not doing that over here. But he really did trust us with that. And when we did the interview, there were some questions that we had, and even beforehand, like I was talking and asking him all the questions and everything, and we had a whole list of questions. And as the interview was going, I was just like, I don't think he's gonna answer this in a good way. Let me not ask this question. Or there were some things that were said and stuff like that, and I was like, you know what? Let me kind of not do this. And he actually went back and listened to the whole thing, listened to the whole interview, and he DM'd us and was like, I love it. Like you guys really were really on top of it and didn't make me sound bad. And I was like, oh, no problem,
I want to pose this question to you guys quickly before my old man brain lets it go away forever. You guys give like your thought out questions to your guests ahead of time? You let them see the show notes?
I personally don't know.
You don't?
Never.
Okay.
Rarely.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
generally, like we bring them in, and like they also have a copy of the show notes. So it's like we can say, oh, okay, if this question is not a thing that we can do, then yeah, forget it, it's gone. And it's a little on the fly editing kind of.
I think personally, as an interviewee, but maybe it's just my journalism brain, I don't want to see the questions. But that's just me.
Sometimes
But,
I give them. Sorry, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
But I don't think I can't recall a guest that has asked to see the questions. But like when we get on, maybe talk a little, like get into the kind of areas of things we might be talking about, so that if it's not something that's in the memory bank, won't ask it.
Yeah, we started writing very in-depth question lists for Boom Rooms and sending them to like Kyle or Ryan, and then it became very obvious that they were not reading them in advance, and so like, yeah, that's fine. It's for me. Like sometimes if I'm talking to someone about like stuff that happened a long time ago or stuff that might not be as front of memory, I might just say like, thinking I'm going to talk about these things, just so that they're not in an interview going, oh, well, I don't remember that. But yeah, these guys know what they're doing, like everybody kind of knows how to do an interview. So I don't think they need to be prepared.
So here,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I'll just add that for me, it helped that I was having conversations with them before I interviewed them, so they know who I was. I mean, like, you're not gonna get that privilege all the time, but having those earlier interviews and then future guests can kind of get a feel of what your show is and what kind of stuff you ask and that sort of thing. Then I don't have to go through the like, okay, well then here are the topics that we discuss, and like they can just like listen to an interview previously and like, oh, okay. She has a bubbly personality. Okay, because I'm not trying to be no TMZ. Now, granted, I'm going to ask you some questions now. I'm going to ask you some questions. But, like, it's either you just don't answer it, or because I've had that. They were just like, girl, bye. And I'm like, okay, fine. We'll move on. That's it. So, yeah. I mean, it's the trust over the years, too, where it's just like you're not trying to, like, like do an expose necessarily, Like, it's, it doesn't really benefit me, but. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm also going to go rogue and ask a question.
Here we go.
Lisa,
I'm gonna go sit down real quick.
How much do
We
you
got this,
think
Chris.
your reputation of doing those interviews helped you book other people down the line?
A lot.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot.
a
Yeah,
huge amount.
Yeah.
I mean, and it and it helped because like I started with Mighty Morphin, right? So like it was Johnny Unbosh, Karen Ashley, Steve Cardenas, Paul Schreier. Like I mean, it was like like folks who were like very visible, and then they talked to their friends. It was like, oh yeah, Lisa's cool, Lisa's cool, Lisa's cool, right? And so that it helped tremendously, and also helped that I was very early on doing it too, so like. So, like for the most part, people are like very willing and nice and cool, but like sometimes now, unfortunately some actors, some actresses have been burned, and so like they're a little bit more cautious. But again, it's those relationships, and sometimes the first ask of doing an interview may not happen, but you might want to have to talk to them a little bit before asking to do it, and that does help because then they know who you are. Yeah.
Awesome. So, who's the golden goose? Who's the golden, like, who would be the golden goose interview for each of you? Like, which actor or Power Ranger
mean White
sphere
Whale?
person? Huh?
Do you mean white whale?
Golden goose, white whale.
You mean like we haven't interviewed yet?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That you
Okay, so
have.
I'm
That
just
you
like-
have not. You're one guest that's still on your bucket list.
Haim Saban.
Oh,
Oh, now that's an episode I
Lisa
would
going
love to
straight
hear.
to the top.
Right.
Ooh.
That's oh, you should try and do that interview.
Haim Saban. Like because we met him at the premiere. So like he was right next to me. I was, and he was signing somebody else's thing. And I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna ask the question, and he just moved along. I'm just like, oh, but I did interview his wife. So, so like
Cheryl is very nice.
and she opened up very, very candidly about her story. So, yeah, Haim Saban for me.
I mean, now it's time to like, yeah. How am I gonna? It's funny, like I love all those folks in that room, but I think our podcast, like, I've interviewed some actors in our time. That's not really like the stuff we do these days,
Yeah.
unless there's a particularly good reason for it. The problem is that I do kind of feel like the ones that I would really want to talk to is like, it's because they're important to me. Like Selwyn, like TJ was my favorite as a kid. But it's also like, we could maybe get that. And the reason that we don't do that is not because he's unattainable, but because we don't do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a different situation. But if we could get Haim, man.
Let's wrap.
I actually have a different answer because a lot of the story of how Haim came to find Sentai and came to persuade Toy Mucky Mucks that this was going to work. And, the whole Margaret Lush story, that's all well known. I think the person who I'd want to get, who is just not available, he's not even on this continent anymore, is Koichi Sakamoto. Because he was around the show going from around season 2 up until the end of RPM and has so much knowledge of the ins and outs of making that show and was the show's kind of liaison with Toy for so long. I'd love to pick his brain about his career path from doing, just like stunt shows at theme parks in Japan to coming to the States, linking up with MPR Productions and the things that he brought to the show and that gave him such staying power for more like nearly 20 years. And I think that's fascinating to me. And I'd really love the chance to actually get to speak with him. He's been at one of these. He was the first one, but hasn't turned up since. Again, because he's so busy doing Kamen Rider and Sentai and Ultraman and all of that.
He did one interview with I wanna say he did because I listened to it. And it was a few years ago, but he did an interview with I don't know.
Tokusatsu Network. He's done interviews with Tokusatsu Network.
Was this on camera?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he was with Sakurako Okubo, who played Chameleon Green and Kyuranger. But I think he also did a solo one.
Yeah, I believe Tokusatsu Network did have Koichi on there. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. That's another good one. Koichi. Yeah, Koichi Child.
Well, I believe No Pink Spandex did this interview already before I got there. But the one I would really love to do, well, let me backtrack. So my ultimate one that I would love to do is with someone who is no longer here, unfortunately.
Oh, right.
Twee Train.
That's true.
because just the way like after everything happened with the split and everything, and they left the show. Just looking at her career path and everything, and just looking at like all the stuff she was doing and how fast she was going and stuff like that, it was just like, oh, she was on fast track to like really being like a big actress. Like she was really going for it. So I would love so sometimes I really do think about like, okay, what would have been like if she was still here with us, and how far would she have gotten? So that's when I would love to have done, is interview her. But the one that I was saying earlier, the one that No Pink Spandex have already done, I believe that was Jeff Pruitt, right?
Jeff Pruitt, yes.
Yes. I would love to do Jeff Pruitt, only because of the fact that I just want to know so much stuff about the movie. Like I want to hear it all. Like how was this? Like, because they had that whole thing with the rat suits, and just like, how did this happen? Like, who thought of this? And like, I would just love to just pick his brain on so much of the stuff about that movie. Yeah.
Oh man, see, for me, it's like I'm thinking of two in my head, and one, I know No Pink Spandex. You guys interviewed David Yost. He's my personal favorite Ranger. Like, I identified so hard with Billy as a kid, being like the smart, nerdy one who got picked on by bullies. So David would be an absolute get. But also, I really think Bruce Kalish would be a fun one.
Oh.
Because, man, I want to know about what's with the explosion fetish. You don't have to get in depth. Like, listen, if it's crossing a barrier, I get it. But, like, man, I want to know, because I'm looking back on those things fondly now. I'm like, man, remember when we used to have 8-foot tall explosions? Those were the days.
As a listener to podcasts, I have two that I was going to throw out there.
Oh, okay.
Jonathan Zakor.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that'd be a fun one.
Hey,
And then
Johnny
one,
T. Got you.
and one that I know is easily obtainable. You just have to reach out. Jim Cushionary. He was the performer of all the theme songs after Zeo. He did Turbo,
Yeah.
Lost Galaxy, Lightspeed Rescue, Wild Force. He did all the Zeo songs. So like the Gold Ranger theme song, that's Jim Cushionary singing.
I somehow
So-
knew. I knew it was going to tie back to the Gold
That
Ranger
would be
somehow.
like for me, that'd be a fun one, because that's not one that I don't think
Like, people think about Ron Wasserman.
they think Ron Wasserman. And
Yeah.
stuff like
There's
that,
so many
but
other composers and performers who come in and out.
Actually,
Besides Noam.
I've thought of one. It's not even a person. All of the people who are like still in the machine making the show, like, they can never do the interview that you want where they like tell you all the actual stuff, right? Like, I get it. They're working on the thing. They have to go into an office and meet people. But, like Simon Bennett, like 10 years from now or 20 years from now,
Or
Yeah.
1 year from now.
or however long that is. Like,
Our interviews with him had to be so vetted. Like,
Yeah.
it was, this is amazing get, but not really, because he can't say anything yet.
and so one day when he can say everything, like those
Oh,
interviews
yeah.
would be great.
yeah, when you can go like 10 years down the road and he's not involved anymore in any capacity whatsoever, and it won't hurt his career. Yeah, and then you can talk about it.
It's so refreshing to have a showrunner who's like on Twitter, on Ranger Board, and not setting up kind of anonymous accounts where he goes on Ranger Board and calls fans morons. Bruce Kalish.
Okay. We're going to keep going. I got to do a time check real quick.
42.
Quarter two.
Okay, so we got 15 more minutes. For anyone who's interested in starting a podcast, right? Say you got a couple of friends, you guys like to talk about it, you want to do it, record it. What advice from veteran podcasters here, who have millions of downloads between all of you combined, what advice could you give to someone who's interested in starting? It doesn't have to be a Power Rangers podcast. It could just be a podcast in general. What advice would you give yourself, for example, today, looking back?
Do the maths and work out how long it's going to take you to do it. And if the number is more than like 5 years, just think about it. Think about how you'll be 40 when it's done, and that's a long time to spend on. No, the podcasting scene is so different to like where it was 10 years ago, even when we started. Let alone, nearly 20 when the longer podcast started. Like, we basically had to bootstrap that thing together. Like, we were uploading audio to archive.org.
Oh my gosh!
And
yes.
building a a website in WordPress that we had to update manually, and like all of that infrastructure is so much easier now that I think the barrier has lowered a lot. We still do ours the bad old-fashioned way, but that's because I'm an old man. I think you want a co-host, and I think you want a co-host who is as into it as you are. Because if they are less into it, you're going to bail and you're going to hate it. And if they're more into it, you can't keep up with that.
If I could piggyback off of that answer,
Yeah.
make sure it's a topic you're going to stay passionate about. Make sure it's not just like, oh, this week I'm feeling skateboarding, and then next week you're like, I'm off skateboarding. Now it's about ice hockey. Like, you want to make sure you can stay passionate about the topic at hand, because if you can't, then your show will peter out very quickly. Luckily Power Rangers for me is one of those fandoms that like is eternal. I will always love Power Rangers. Through the good and the bad, I will love Power Rangers. And that's why, when I saw that post, like, hey, who wants to do a Power Rangers podcast? I was like, yeah, why not? That makes sense. Let's do that. So make sure it's a topic you can stay passionate about.
I would kind of piggybacking off your answer. Make sure that you do the research. Know like what vendors you want to use. Get your domain. Get your domain first thing.
Oh my gosh, get your domain. Get your domain.
Get your domain
first thing.
Yes.
Because when I started the show, I did not buy a domain, and then 5 minutes later, another site started a message board using that name, got the .com, .net, and I had to wheel and deal with this guy to get those domains from him, and it was not cheap. Fortunately, to his credit, he did it at cost and changed the name of his board to Ranger Crew. Did I accidentally name him?
The shade.
But yeah,
Are you drinking water or tea over there? I don't know.
yeah. But I think do your research and get good equipment. Get get all your services set up before you jump in. But also something that I tried to do when I revived RangerCast is try to include diverse voices, both in opinions and also ethnicity, all of that. Like right now, RangerCast, one of our hosts is a person of color, another is in the LGBT community, and trying to make it a little less white. But I think that was kind of part of the questions I had asked myself when I decided to bring it back, on top of figuring out the why. And then I became a mod on the Ranger board, on the Power Ranger subreddit, and found my why.
And I'll add lastly that yes, diversity is important, not just in opinions, but just like cultures, backgrounds, that sort of thing. But like once you found out how you're doing it, get the equipment, like if you're doing audio, video, whatever, however you find out, record your first few episodes and don't publish it. Don't.
I still never learned that.
Stick here, because my first few episodes are trash, right? But then I was just like, oh my gosh, I gotta get a co-host. Okay, fine, got a co-host. Okay, wow, we agree on a lot of things. Nope, gotta get somebody who disagrees with me. Got Jer. Okay, but then then it was just like, okay, now we're going. Okay, now we're moving. Now we're shaking. That sort of thing. Like, record your first few episodes if you've never done it before, and don't publish it, even though you might want to. And then later on, when y'all big and famous and stuff like that, then you get your Patreons and stuff. Then that could be exclusive content. Ooh, look at the pilot episodes.
Oh, and yeah, prepare to spend a lot of money.
So,
Yeah.
So all that.
There's that.
Would you say a microphone's important too? Like good quality mic?
Yeah.
I mean, a decent mic.
You don't have to break the bank. You don't have to spend $300 on a microphone,
Well, no,
but spend more
But
than
don't
50.
use the Guitar Hero microphone.
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
We've all done it. Just get a proper microphone.
Yeah, nowadays, especially, I mean, a lot of us who have made friends, over the internet, and so we're doing a lot of these podcasts virtually. So yeah, like you can get a good headset, make sure that your computer, you can actually record the audio that you're doing. I mean, it really doesn't have to break the bank unless you want to be fancy, right? Like if it's just two people talking, like you don't have to break the bank. So it's a lot easier to start a podcast, but to be consistent and do it, that's the hard part.
Yeah, worry about upgrading the
Right.
equipment later, like after you've had a few years under your belt, or be like me and don't upgrade until April of this year.
I do want to add to that. Honestly, for me, and this is with me and my group, we've already been friends. Like I knew Will for like, oh my God, I knew Will almost 12 years. I met Lena in 2016, so we've been like friends for a while. And my thing is just have fun. Honestly, like the way we do it is it's almost kind of like it's just friends, just getting around, just talking and just having a good time. And honestly, like that's to me that's what works for us, and that's what keeps us going. Is it just like, oh, it's just us meeting and just having a good time versus like, oh, I feel like we have to do this structured thing, and then it almost kind of feels like, okay, now I'm starting to like turn this into something like a job or something like that, and it's like, okay, I'll get burned out much faster versus something where it's just us meeting and having a good time.
We have some time. If anyone in the audience has a question, let's start in the pink over here.
That's right.
Oh,
Sure. Yes. The thing about early Mighty Morphin that I don't know that any season after that has ever been able to replicate is that it is absolutely unhinged. like true, there's sporadic episodes in later seasons, but in later seasons they like know how to make a TV show, and that is not always true right at the start. Like this is a brand new thing that they're cobbling together, where they're like shooting 5 minutes of footage and grabbing stuff and being like, does it match? Not really. It's fine. The kids won't notice. And the kids did not notice. There is a real beauty to that energy. I have no desire to go back and watch it. I would like to watch the shows that are good.
Oh gosh.
Thank you for the question. We have another question. We'll do black here, and then we'll do blue right afterwards.
So sorry, that was what was the moment where we felt like we'd made it? Yeah.
Never.
right.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think for me, there was multiple times. I mean, the last time was going to the premiere of the 2017 movie.
Yep.
Because low key, I was like asking representatives, I'm just like, so is there a possibility that someone like me can go to the premiere? And they would be like, shh, we're going to let you go to the premiere, but shh, we haven't announced it yet. I'm like, and then I'm like screaming and crying and telling them like, we're going to the premiere. Like it was a whole thing, and I was
Full
like,
blown ugly crying, just
ugly
like, oh my god,
crying,
we're going to
like,
premiere.
this is happening to me. And I had just gotten a new job, and I was just like, hi, so I got invited to a premiere. Can I go? Like, it was a whole thing.
I gotta duck out of work. I'm going to a big Hollywood premiere.
So can I go? And my boss, who was really great, and in fact, my boss at the time, she was part of the casting in Toronto for like the Disney seasons. So, like that agency, she was part of it. So I was just like, oh my gosh, you understand? You're my people. I can go. So I think by then I was just like, oh look, I made a thing. But to be truthful, I always feel like I have not. I mean, to be honest, like imposter syndrome is real. I always think like I am nothing, I am worth nothing, I have done nothing. And I don't know when I'll ever get over that, but yeah, the premiere was pretty cool.
I think I want to piggyback off of that with, imposter syndrome is real. And even when you do big achievements like, for me, the answer of when did you feel like you made it? I would say, well, it felt like we made it when we got to interview Simon Bennett. Having the current showrunner on the podcast, that's a big get.
Yep.
That's awesome. Hey, we've made it. But in the back of my mind, I'm just like, no one knows who you are. No one knows your voice or your face. They don't care. No one cares. Like, when I got told I was going to be on panels this weekend, I went, why? Who am I? What's going on? I don't get it. Did somebody play a prank on me? But, you do have to kind of learn to shut that voice up and be like, no, you know what? Hey, we are who we are doing our shows, all of us up here. And each one of us has done a show that has done some great things, be it, having a controversial guest, be it having, a format that no one thought to do the math on. It's the imposter syndrome is a big problem, but I feel like as long as you can keep in constant communication with your friends and your co-hosts, that helps numb the pain a bit.
I think I felt like we made it when we had the Robert Axelrod interview, which was really early on. But I think the show really hit its stride around the 50th, when things kind of shook up, and I brought on Chris Finero as a guest. He had a website that was pretty well known in the fandom at the time, and he ended up sticking around. And I think we sort of had a stable group of people that lasted until the end of the show. He's no longer in the fandom, but he's a lifelong friend. I'm grateful to have met him.
4 years ago, almost to the day, I think, we were down in Anaheim. It was Power Morphicon 2018. And Matthew and I, working incredibly hard behind the scenes, helped make Shattered Grid Live happen.
Oh, that was nice.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have any memory of watching it because I was sitting at a table off to the side hitting enter every time we had to change the slide. But I knew we could do a podcast. Like, we'd done a podcast for 6 years. It's easy. You talk into microphones and then you put it on the internet. But being able to go like, oh, we can actually, we can do, we had an idea for a thing and we told it to a bunch of people and they said, that's a great idea. And then 15 actors were like, yeah, we'll do that. And then 1,000 people crammed into a room and were like, yeah, this is great. Is like, yeah, maybe we're all right at this. Maybe.
That is still one of my fondest memories from that con, was being in that room and for the first time hearing Dave Fielding come on and just say, Rangers. And immediately just...
We all got goosebumps on that one, I think.
It was just the best.
Something that could only happen at Power Morphicon.
Yes.
There were people, there was stuff from that week's comic that was in that, and I was one of maybe the 5 people in the room who had read that comic.
Yeah.
It was like the one where, let's say, Draken is again terrible at giving hugs.
Yeah, it was a good time. Sorry we didn't do it again this year. We've all been very busy.
All right, so we have one last question here.
I'm gonna defer because I haven't really interviewed a lot of the newer actors.
I've talked to some of them kind of off camera. I think the biggest thing is, especially the first crew, they didn't know they were making Power Rangers. Like, they made the show, and then it turned out every child in the world thought it was the best thing they'd ever seen. I think, like, the newer folks, especially we're at tables across from the Dino Fury cast, like, those guys knew that they were going to make Power Rangers, and they knew what that meant for people. And, like, Power Morphicon 4 years ago, every time a kid came up, Brennan would do a backflip. And it's like, because kids love it, and I love it, and I'm a 30-year-old adult man. And, like, I think that's not to say that the older guys were worse with kids, but I think the newer guys have a real understanding of, like, how important this franchise is 30 years in. And I really like it. Love seeing a kid recognize a Power Ranger.
Awesome. All right, so we are just about out of time. So I want to thank everyone for showing up to the Power Rangers
thank you
podcast
guys.
channel. Please give it up for the podcast hosts that are up here. Real quick before we go, can we start with Tyler? Go way down and tell everybody where they can find your show, where they can subscribe to you.
Rangercast.net, or plug Rangercast into your favorite podcast reader or microwave.
RangerDangerPodcast.com or at RangerDcast. At Ranger Danger is some guy who spends a lot of time outside.
Oh dear. You can find No Pink Spanics on all the socials: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and NoPinkSpanics.com. So yeah, feel free, follow us.
You can find Tribunal of the Grid at linktr.ee/Tribunal of the Grid. All of our links are there: our SoundCloud, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts.
So we are on Twitter at Ranger Command PH. We also have our own website, rangercommand.com. From there, you can find all of our episodes. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone, coming out. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Power Morphicon, I think the show's just about to close up for the day. They will open again tomorrow morning. Come on out. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have a fun
I hear
weekend.
there's some kind of hullabaloo about some kind of panel.
Is there-
You don't know about that?
No.